I'm a family physician. Probably is not an unfamiliar journey with people where, you try multiple things and try different meds and try this and try that. And, you get some effect from some effect from the other, but never really fully kind of.
For people who are struggling with anxiety or mental health, what beyond MAGU, what are some other ways people can try to improve their lives?
Living Better podcast.
What's up, y'all? It's Ryan Morimoto here, and this is our show, Living Better. Welcome to a happier and healthier you. And today I have Customer Appreciation Day with Dr. Andrew. Hey, Dr. Andrew, can you introduce yourself and give a bit of background of what you do?
Yeah. So I'm a family physician. Did my most of my service in medicine so far with the Army. So did med school, got out in 17 in FIU down in Miami. Then did my residency at Fort Bragg in North Carolina, and then came to El Paso for the time after that. Did 4 years serving that way, total of seven, and then got out in June. So um, doing family medicine kind of hits a lot of things. So we're BH is mental health is a big one. So it's definitely something that we're used to seeing, used to treating. So
Right, right. Well, thank you again for your service, and I
yeah,
appreciate that background. Appreciate everything you do, to help people with their health, and it's always good to meet and hear people are doing that.
yeah.
So, for you, when it came to Magu, like what was life like before you tried Magu? Like what kind of got you to try it? Like what were some of the symptoms that were showing up?
Yeah, so I've been uh having anxiety, depression for, probably the better part of 2 decades now, right? So that probably is not an unfamiliar journey with people where, you try multiple things and try different meds and try this and try that. And, you get some effect from some effect from the other, but never really fully kind of move the needle very, very far. And so during probably the last, I don't know, 5, 10 years or so, I've really gotten more into the foundational medicine, the functional medicine, the quote unquote crunchy end of treatment of things, right? And so that's suitable for cancer, diabetes, all kinds of stuff, in addition to BH stuff. And so I think the worst the anxiety was probably during the pandemic time. So I got COVID. Gosh, that must have been February of 22, and like the anxiety was worse afterwards, for whatever
Yeah.
reason. And so increased meds, multiple panic attacks a day. It was pretty bad. That kind of leveled off over the next year, but still there's always something there, right? Like I said, it's you're compounding treatments to kind of hopefully, get you to a, 10 out of 10, but it's, it never really truly happened. And so what got me on Magu is, I mean, obviously it's your ad campaigns are pretty good. It clicked up on my Instagram or my Facebook feed, one of the two. And like I said, I've been using a lot of these, quote unquote alternative crunchy modalities for a little bit. And so it's something that like, is intriguing to me. And so, I mean, there's a lot out there as you've seen, there's definitely the true stuff, the snake oil salesman, and then everything kind of in between. And so obviously it's a review based thing. So you kind of read people's comments um, and in this day and age, those can be bought too. So it's kind of,
True.
it's still interesting to read. So you read those, you're like, all right. And so there was one on there on the Facebook page. It was like, if you're hesitant, just I've tried like 10 things. This was helpful. And I was like, all right, if real, that's a worthwhile one to try. And I was like, it's, as a doctor, luckily I have the discretionary funds to kind of just, play around with what works. And I was like, let's try it, And so yeah, definitely since using it, it's I wouldn't say because I have other stuff I need to kind of work on for BH2. So I think I get a little bit less juice for the squeeze for some things because as a guy with sleep apnea and kind of poor sleep, um, if that's not maximized first, nothing's going to really fit into place. So it's still working on it. So I don't think I've gotten like, the full benefit of what could be, like a 10 out of 10, but definitely move the needle more than other supplements for sure. Um, I just tried not the mind hack, but the second
The
blend
sunrise,
yesterday.
white
Yeah,
sunrise.
tried it
Yeah.
last night for the first time, and it was great. Like it's definitely it was recommended as more of like a nighttime one, and typically anxiety peaks at night, and that one I was sitting in bed laying down, I was like, man, actually, I think this one actually did a pretty good job. And so, yeah, it's definitely an overtime thing. Like day one, day two of the mind hack was, nothing really noticeable, which was typical, right? And then as time went on, it definitely, lowered the baseline of anxiety down. Is it ever going to be 10 out of 10? I'm going to be, perfectly anxiety free. I don't know, right? I tell patients and friends and family all the time, like, some people are born to be 10 out of 10 happy. Some people, kind of, red line at 7, and maybe that's good enough for them, right? And so, but it definitely has moved the needle toward it being like an improvement and over a quicker time, and probably more so than other supplements I've tried. Believe me, I've tried a lot of them, so
Right. Well, thanks for that overall background,
yeah,
and you hit upon a lot of good points, a lot of good themes that I hear. And so I kind of want to unpack that a little bit
yeah.
because, a lot of people do come to us, oh, I've tried dozens of prescription meds or I've tried 10 different supplements and, I'm not sure if this is working. I'm not sure if I should try this, right? Because like you said, there's a lot of snake oils out there.
Yeah.
There's a lot of uh different marketing schemes. There's just so much chaos that it can be hard for people to try things to improve their health, right?
Yeah.
And so just kind of going in there with that thought in mind, and other people's kind of going through the same thought process. For you, what was kind of like your thought process on what made you to decide to check out Magu? Like what kind of pushed you over the edge?
Honestly, it was that review.
Oh yeah.
Because I saw it and I was like, because obviously when you buy enough of these things or looking at enough of these things, the algorithms know kind of what you want. And so like obviously it pushed, Magu and other items, into my feed. And so I saw it and I was like, you've seen enough of these things over time. You're like, okay, is this just another one of those like,
Mhm.
you know, pseudo fake supplements where, they give enough kind of vague symptoms like, do you have brain fog? Are you down and depressed? Well, I mean, a good amount of people are great. And it's like, this will help you. It's 100%. It's going to work. It's perfect. And
Right.
you read the reviews, and there's like two or three obviously bought reviews, and you're like, oh, okay, that's fake. And so you go to the next one, right? But the obviously, honestly, the advertisement was pretty good. It was, well written. It was well focused. It was saying like basically like we just talked about like, have you tried, benzos? Have you tried SSRIs? Have you tried a lot of these meds, a lot of these therapies? Have you done talk therapy? Have you done all this? Um, and it's not been helpful. This might be for you. And I was like, oh, well, it's kind of well said. And then within that review, like the guy was like, I've tried a lot of things. Well, I was like, that's me. And so I kind of identified with that. He's like, if you're on the fence, just give it a try. And I was like, okay, well, I mean, let's do it. And then not just that one review, but there's a multitude of them, right? And so normally when you have like the sketchier ones, there's like two guys who are like, this is really good. Okay, those are the two owners that just, made different accounts and said it's really good. But there was a good amount of community involvement within Magu, and like, and then I get back to the comments too. A lot of the comments on the other ones will be people asking questions like, "Does this work? Does this work?" And tagging other people and asking questions. But all of the ones on here were like, the company's great, like everybody works with you really well, this product works. Like they were all just flooded with good stuff. And so at that point, it's like, is this real or fake? Probably real. I mean, that's a lot of fake ones to do. It is possible, but I'll go with it, right? And it's um like it said all the right things, and I was like, there might be something to this. So kind of went on a limb and tried it, and here we are.
I appreciate that feedback of our
Yeah,
community. Yes, we do have a great community of customers like yourself willing to participate and help spread everything. So I appreciate you. I appreciate our community
yeah,
for that. And I guess where I want to go with this now, right, is kind of the journey, let's say, right? Like you mentioned some of the first couple days going through it and trying both products. can you kind of give an overview of like how you're feeling now and the journey, like from start to finish there, how long you've been taking it? Like, can you kind of explain to people what you experienced?
Yeah. Yeah. So I would say we'll start with Mind Hack because Mind Hack's the one I've used the longest. Um, Used it day one. Obviously nothing really there, which is expected, right? So like that happens with medications too. Like people will come back and say, "Oh, I don't like this one. It didn't work." How long did you take it? 2 days. I was like, well, it takes like a month to work, so it's not surprising, right? It's all like dose dependent and time dependent. So knowing that in mind, I was like, oh, let's just keep going. About I think a week in, James texted me, was like, hey, how are things going? I was like, about the same, maybe a little better. It's kind of hard to tell. At the time, I restarted doing some ketosis, and that can kind of throw off like sleep and whatnot. And so I was like, yeah, maybe it's that. He's like, yeah, try doubling because it's during the loading period, let's double. And I was like, okay, yeah. So doubled. 7 days later, day 14, probably texted again, and that was more noticeable. So uh, I didn't notice as much as like the day to day. Day 14 was like that kind of basal level of anxiety was lowered, but things that would typically make my anxiety worse did not as much. And so it was I guess a more resilience if that makes sense. And so example one that I keep coming back to is sleep, right? So if I have a poor night's sleep, that next day I'm normally fatigued and brain fog, but I'm also like a lot more anxious. And so I noticed during that time period, like if I didn't sleep that well, I was still fine the next day. And so the things that normally would really kick into anxiety weren't doing that as much. And so doubled the dose until probably like around day, week 3, say 21, day 28, week 4. Now I'm back to like the single maintenance kind of thing. And I would say between the week 2 and week 4 is when kind of the basal lowered. And so now it wasn't as, I hate the word triggered, right? But I wasn't
Mhm.
as the things that increased the anxiety were less than the side the consequence of that trigger was less intense. And then the basal like lower rate during the day. So instead of being at like a 10 being the worst, instead of being like at a 5 all day, I was at like a 3. And so that,
Nice.
that basal lowered and then the triggers, the peaks lowered. So probably it took me closer to the 4 week point. Um, but that's like I was telling James, like it depends with what we're doing with, sleep and ketosis. Those are all factors that kind of,
Right.
weigh in. And there are some like other supplement med changes. So had it been just a purist just using that might have, been a little different. But definitely by week 4 where it's at. And then the second variety, what was it called again? I forgot.
White sunrise?
Yeah. So that one I've only used once, but used it last night. And then, like I said, typically nighttime is a more anxious period for whatever reason. And it was not at all. And so I was like, oh, well, end of one, that good experience so far. Uh,
Nice.
so that one I'll have to kind of play with during, the weeks to come and see.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah. Everybody's body's different, our diets, things that we do, severity of symptoms, all different. So some people can feel it, day 1 or 2. Some people feel it day 10. It could take a little bit of time, like you said, just based on what we're doing with our lives, how we're
Yeah.
eating, and severity of symptoms and things like that. So I appreciate that
Yeah.
kind of journey you went through so people can get a realistic expectation, right? Because
Yeah.
some people do feel it early, but some people may take longer. So I
Yeah.
appreciate that. And, you know, supplements are one thing, right? It's gonna supplements or medication can help you, yet things like diet, like you talked about, like ketosis and different therapies and things can help as well. So for people who are struggling with anxiety or mental health, what beyond Magu, what are some other ways people can try to improve their lives?
Oh man, how much time you got? So I did a little bit of thinking on this last night. So I was talking to my fiance. I was like, all right, I'm going to make a list of kind of these, crunchy alternative stuff that I've done to include non-crunchy medicines, whatnot, in this kind of journey. And so I came up with like a decent list. So I guess I'll just, try to keep it brief, but go through some of them. and highlight the ones that are the biggest. So what's really nice is lavender oil.
Hmm.
So the edible essential oil, not just like the scent is nice, right? But there's a compound in it called selectin, that is very anxiety crushing. And so there's a not to plug the product, they don't give me anything, but one called Calmade that I use. Like 30 pills, $15 on Amazon. It's great. The only side effect is a nice little lavendery burp, but I've noticed it to be very, very effective for the acute use, because they studied it against benzos and did pretty well in similarity. So kava is another one that kind of fits in the herbal area.
Yeah.
So the MAGU. So kava is nice. Brand I use right now is True Kava. The tinctures are really nice. Um, let's see. We have I swapped over from coffee to cacao, so a brewed
Okay.
cacao. So it gives you that same kind of energy morning drink, but caffeine can be very, stimulating
Right.
for anxiety folks. Um, Methylene blue is super nice. I don't know if you've looked too much into that, but there's a brand called Proscriptions that I use. So methylene blue, it started as an industrial dye, but it was one of the first antipsychotics. So it has a whole lot of BH benefit to it. Like I mentioned before, sleep. So hugely important, whether it's the sleep apneic or the not. So maximizing that. So, mouth tape is great. Eye masks are great. Giving a cool room is great. Blue light exposure. So these glasses I'm wearing now, are a brand called Viva Rays. And so they have different little clip-ons for nighttime and then sleeper nighttime. So blue light exposure is huge for sleep maximization. Magnesium is another nice supplement, whether orally or transdermally. So they make soaks. The one I use right now is called Living the Good Life brand. And so transdermal soaks on your feet are just as good as taking it orally, if not better. Orally, there's a one called Upgraded Formulas I use. And so magnesium is good for going back to sleep. It's good for sleep. It's good for mood. It's good for, muscle tension. And I would say about 80% of people are deficient in mag. So
Yeah.
it's a useful one. Things that's free, grounding is super nice. So it gets kind of a voodoo vibe to it. But I mean, it's with those kind of things, if it's free and it has no side effect, what's the negative, right? I'm gonna go sit on the ground and I get better, I don't, right? And so grounding is nice, and to pair that with sunshine too. So sunshine exposure is a huge sleep cue and a BHQ. So morning sunshine is great. Obviously, smart sunshine. Don't go out at, noon for 5 hours, during June. You're probably gonna get burnt, but like there's smart
Yeah.
sunshine exposure, and that helps with like hormonal production for, sleep later in the day. Optimizing testosterone for guys, whatever that may be, whether it be through diet, whether it be through losing weight, whether it be through increasing your sleep. Like these are all ways we can fix testosterone, all the way up to, TRT if that's something you need, replacement or something like that. That can move the needle for kind of BH and more depression, fatigue kind of things. Um, Gut health is huge. So fire in the brain, fire in the gut kind of phenomenon. So whether that be through quality probiotics, right now I'm using one called Thrive. That's pretty good. There's a company called Viome that does like a gut analysis where you do some stool samples. It'll tell you kind of, what's in there, what's not. So that can be hugely important with, serotonin production. So those are kind of the highlights. Uh,
Nice.
but there's a lot of stuff out there. Like I said, I've tried a lot of stuff over the last 5-10 years, because medicine is not the end all be all, right?
Yes.
There's definitely reasons that depression and anxiety are higher now than they were, let's say, 100 years ago, right? I mean,
Yeah.
we're more connected, social media, yada yada, sure. But there's also, we're seeing blue light until we go to bed, and that's cueing our brain. It's noon, so we're getting poor sleep, poor nutrition, poor hydration. And so is there something to the non-medical route? I think so. And so
Yeah. I think you touched on a lot of good points, and just what I absorbed and resonate with, right, is, there's the macronutrients like the proteins and fats and things like that. But you touched on a really good point with like magnesium and some of these other things you mentioned, where there's like these micronutrients where um, they can help, right? Like they definitely can help. Like you said, the vitamins from the sun that you can get and
Yep.
everything like that. That's kind of part of like holistic life, right? Like being able to put all these together to then also, like you said, get good sleep through making sure with our new technology, like these computers that we're using, how much that can actually affect our body as well. So I appreciate you touching on all of that. And you
Yeah,
know,
I always tell my patients, like, I mean, to be fully optimized, like if we plucked a guy from the middle of the Amazon, like his sleep's going to be outrageous. Like he's going to have all this REM sleep. He's going to have a testosterone that's perfect. Like his coronary arteries will look great. He will have no insulin resistance, right? But we can't do that, right? No one's willing to do that, and that makes sense. Like we have creature comforts, we have things that we like, and so the question is how to get as close to that in the modern world. So like you said, like I'm not going to not use a computer. I'm not going to not use my phone. These are hugely helpful tools. But like how do we mitigate that? Is the blue light a mitigator? Our soil is worse than it has been. So we used to get a lot of minerals from the food we eat because it was in the soil, but now it's not. So do we supplement that, right? So the idea is kind of supplementing and mimicking as much as we can to be in this kind of, prehistoric environment, if you will. That's probably where health comes from.
right.
The reason we deviate from that is how we get, more pathology and whatnot. So,
Right. And I guess where we can go with this, I've made my mistakes with my health in the past. You know, I feel like it's okay and normal for a lot of us to try to figure this out over time, right? Like you mentioned, blue light before sleep. Like I used to just, have my computer or TV going as I was trying to go to sleep because I thought, oh, this will
oh
help me
yeah,
relax. This
yep,
will help me put me to sleep. And little did I know, like it was affecting my sleep, right?
yep,
And eating before bed, inflammatory in the gut, like you said, not realizing that an inflamed gut could be leading to my shoulder pain because of inflammation, things like that. So for you, since you're a doctor and you've seen people, what common themes or things have you seen of like maybe biggest mistake or quick fixes that people can think about to improve their health? What should people be kind of looking out for as common mistakes that you see?
yeah. So I'd say one thing for sleep is that I see often is so the thing is insomnia, right? And so the I can't get to sleep, and so what people will try to do is take things to then get to sleep that can, inadvertently be harmful. And so the classic one is drinking, like, oh, I'll drink before I go to bed. That'll help me get to sleep. And so that gets you to sleep, but then that quality of, so there's two things with sleep, there's quantity and quality. So like, cool, I got 8 hours, but that alcohol definitely disrupted my ability to get into REM, which is where the quality of sleep is, right?
Right.
I've seen people take Benadryl for years for sleep.
Hmm.
Um, Not as bad as alcohol, but same kind of thing. Like just getting to sleep isn't the concern. So it's kind of that band-aid approach where it's like, oh, cool, I buffed the numbers, I got 8 hours, but does it really equate to 8 good hours? Um, Ambien ends up being the same kind of thing, and so uh, to those three, the theme there is kind of band-aid over like foundational treatment, right? And so, oh, I'm sad, I'm gonna um over a shop, or I'm going to drink more, I'm going to do this kind of thing to like make me feel better, but is that really doing any foundational thing? Is everything still rotten, but you just spray paint it over and it looks fine? um I'll say quick fixes are probably the other theme of those things, right? It's like I don't want to do the work, I don't want to, and it's not always like a negative thing like on them, like because it's like a lot of things I'm saying are easy to talk about but harder to actually implement, right? So if I'm saying, don't eat the standard American diet, it's inflammatory, seed oils are bad, great, that's easy to understand. But then it's like, all right, go live in the world. Like you go to work and they provide food and you're not gonna be like, well, does this have seed oils in it? No, you're probably just gonna eat it because that's what we do, right? And so or you come home and you're like tired and you're like, oh, do I want to order something? Of course you're going to. I mean, it makes sense. Like we that's what we do. And so someone's birthday, we eat stuff. And so I'd say a lot of this is like you got to put the work in. And there's definitely, I think we're overall sicker than what we think we are. And some of these quick fixes aren't going to do much. Trying to think of other mistakes people make. Yeah, I would say that's probably the biggest one is, because, and again, being empathetic with them too, it makes sense. Like I'm sitting here suffering. I am, if perfect mood is 10 out of 10, I'm sitting here at a 2 and I hate this. Well, I want this to be fixed tomorrow. A lot of these things aren't going to be fixed tomorrow. And so I see the allure of those things. And that's kind of unfortunate where these snake oil salesmen come in too. It's like, this will be perfect. You'll fix yourself by tomorrow. Give me $100. And you're like, sure, take my money. And so a lot of those either quick supplements or the alcohol, the Benadryl, the Ambiens, kind of, we're treating more symptoms than causes. So
Right.
that's where I kind of want to end up practicing taking with medicine is, going more for root cause because, like I said, if it's rotten on the inside, you just paint it. Okay, it looks fine, but that's still rotten inside. Your house is going to fall eventually. And so why not fix the thing that's causing it versus just kind of masking it? So
I think I think that's great advice, finding the root cause of the problem rather than Band-Aid. The car is overheating. You might be able to pour some water on it and get another mile or two, but if you keep doing that, the car is
yeah,
gonna break down. So we
yeah,
need to address
yeah,
the root cause, right? And I've appreciated everything that you shared so far. As we wrap out here, if you could tell the people like, one thing to take away from this conversation to prove their mental health or their health, what would you say to them for them to take away from this?
yeah. I would say so. The negative kind of what I mentioned is like it's a laundry list, right? So it can be kind of
Daunting.
daunting. Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's like, and as someone who has like anxiety, if you're also like a type A kind of person, you're like, oh, I gotta get this perfect, like I gotta do this right. I gotta do all the research before I start stuff. I gotta start all these things so they sound good. And that's kind of the negative of some of my supplement routine is like I take a good amount of like items. And so that's what was harder with Magu to be like, was this helping? Is this hurting? I don't know because I take too many things early on. And so I would say just find somewhere to start, right? Like um and then if that moves the needle, great. And then like again, if 10 out of 10 scale, let's say 10 out of 10 is, perfect happiness, no anxiety, nothing. If you're like at a 2 and you're like, oh man, I'm so overwhelmed, I can't do all this stuff. Like, find out the most glaring thing. So, how's my sleep? God awful. I sleep 2 hours a night. All right, that's maybe where to start, right? And so talking about like, relaxation techniques and making the room cool and blue light stuff and white noise machines and doing mindfulness routines before bed and get that 2 to 4. All right, great. How are you feeling? Get that 2 to 6. Great. And then that's maybe some mag on top of that. All right, now I'm less anxious. I'm a little better sleeping. All right, now I'm at my sleep's fixed. That 2 out of 10 went to like a 4. All right, now I'm more likely to be able to do other things. So it's daunting, but as bad as it sounds, is no one cares more about your behavioral health or your mental health or your physical health than you.
Right.
So if you're not going to do anything to move the needle, no one else is going to. You're going to be stuck at it too. So it's daunting. There's a lot of options, uh, and it can be expensive, but there are, different hacks to make it work. So like a lot of sleep hacks can be relatively cheap. Um, Going outside and seeing sunshine and grounding is absolutely free. So it doesn't have to be this, I'm taking 30 supplements and doing all this stuff because, I have a 12-hour job I got to work today. Like I don't have time to do that. It doesn't have to be like that. It can be if that you want to do, but like just pick something, start somewhere. Because there's definitely improvement to be had. It just, and stick with it too. Because like I said, I've tried a lot of things, and like you try one thing, you're like, oh, this doesn't work. Well, I'm going to stop all of it. And that's probably not the right reaction too, right? So that just
Right.
because it doesn't work, like we already talked about, there's a huge group of snake oil salesmen. So did the one you try, is that what it was? And that's why it didn't work. The somewhat unfortunate part about supplements is it's unregulated, right? So I could sell you sugar pills and call it magnesium, and that's it. And make all the money off the profit because I didn't put anything in there. So stick with it, source things right. But start somewhere because, like I said, if you don't start, no one's going to start for you. So,
I like that. Pick one thing and go with it. Hopefully it's Magu. If it's just going in the sun, if it's getting better
yeah,
sleep, whatever it is, pick one thing, roll with it, and just improve upon it.
yeah.
Appreciate you so much, Dr. Andrew. If people out there, if you have any questions, drop a comment below. Share this with a friend that you might think is valuable like this, and subscribe for more. We'll see y'all next time.